Republican Representative Ron Paul of Texas has been called the godfather of the Tea Party. He ran for president on the Libertarian Party line, but returned to Congress as a Republican and ran twice more for president. Along the way, sparked what some call the Ron Paul Revolution. It promotes smaller government, less regulation and spending, and a greatly diminished U.S. role overseas. Congressman Paul retires at the end of this present term, and Ron Paul supporters, we want to hear from you. Where do you go once your leader has retired from Congress? 800-989-8255. Email us, talk@npr.org. You can also join the conversation on our website. This is at npr.org. Click on Talk of the Nation. Of course, political junkie Ken Rudin is with us, and Congressman Paul joins us from his office in Lake Jackson, Texas. And good to have you back on the program, sir.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
And I wonder, as you look, what advice would you have for your supporters? Where should they go once you've retired?
Well, I think of that in a different way. I don't think people have to have leaders. I think because I emphasize so much of the individual. If there is a revolution, it's going to be spontaneous. So much of what happened in our campaign didn't come from a well-organized campaign. It came from a lot of individuals getting together on the internet and spontaneously doing things. They raised money spontaneously. They would come out to rallies spontaneously with the help of the internet and with our encouragement. So I think they'll have plenty of places to go. I think they'll act as individuals, and they're going to create a whole new atmosphere, and they're going to propel the revolution, I think, in a very healthy way.
Inside the Republican Party or inside the Libertarian Party?
Yes, and it's irrelevant, and I hope inside the Democratic Party, because, I have as many supporters coming as independents and Democrats as I do Republicans. This foreign policy that I believe in and the position on civil liberties is much better supported outside the Republican primary. I mean, that was a tough place to sell what I was believing in. I mean, I'm sure you were aware of the resistance on some of my foreign policy at those debates.
Indeed, some of your foreign policy positions sit better on the left side of the Democratic Party.
That's right, and I recall one quote by Nixon many years ago after we went off the gold standard. He says, "We're all Keynesians now." So Keynesian type of economics has been taught and accepted in this country for a long time, so both parties follow it. So I think if you have truly a change in attitudes and understanding on foreign policy and economic policy, it will change both parties. And it's the ideas that count, not so much the political leaders and politicians think they're very important, but they more or less are a reflection of a prevailing intellectual attitude.
Ken?
Congressman, given the fact that you said that as many supporters of yours come from the Democrats and independents as they do from Republicans, and given your positions on civil liberties and foreign policy, and given the fact that you refused to endorse both John McCain in 2008 and Mitt Romney in 2012, why do you stay a Republican?
Because of the system. The system is very biased against the democratic process where you can compete. I tried it, as mentioned in the introduction, that I did it as a libertarian in '88, spent more than half the money just trying to get on the ballots. And you take Gary Johnson this time, he was a governor for 8 years. He got no credibility. He doesn't get into debates. We spend more time and more money, and more lives are lost by us going to foreign countries saying that we're going to spread democracy. And yet here at home, if you come to the conclusion that Republicans and Democrats never change policy, no matter what they say when they get in office, same policy exists on foreign policy, then really we have a one-party system which is biased against anybody, whether it's the Green Party or the Libertarian.
You and your supporters worked inside the Republican Party to, as you say, infiltrate it and take over state party mechanics and state parties, and then were roughly shoved out of that role during the Republican convention.
Well, in the convention, yes, on the surface it looks like we were pushed out forever. But if I had a call last night from the chairman of the Republican Party in Iowa, strong supporter for the last 4 years, and this is happening around the country, in Alaska, I believe, and Nevada and Maine. We have very, very strong presence within the Republican Party. I just don't want to limit it to that. I see it as a much bigger picture. And yet, at the same time, you just saw it this week when we saw the speaker kick out 2 or 3 supporters supporters who endorse me off their committees. But I think that hurts them and helps us because it emphasizes our independence and our willingness to stick to principle.
Let's see, we get some callers in on the conversation. Our guest, of course, is Republican Congressman Ron Paul, who retires at the end of this term. And we'll start with Joshua. Joshua is on the line from Cleveland.
Dr. Paul, I can't say what an honor to speak with you, first of all. I supported you in 2 presidential campaigns. I voted for Gary Johnson this year and expect if he runs again in 4 years, I'll be voting for him also. I guess my question to you is, who do we have left? Because Representative Kucinich here in Cleveland, who I voted for also because I'm, a moderate who's willing to compromise on a few issues, and yourself seem to be the only people in all of Congress who have a problem with Obama running the war on terror the way that Bush did with the drone strikes and, murdering a 16-year-old American child. Who do we have left to advocate for peace in Congress with you and Representative Kucinich leaving?
Well, we weren't the only two. I think we were more visible, and we worked together, and he is a good friend, and we will continue to speak out. But I'm cautiously optimistic that we picked up several more that will be in the Congress. And, Justin Amash, for instance, was one of the individuals that was punished by Boehner, will be there, and he will stand fast. And he had to work a little harder this year to get reelected, but it was reelected. So I think the people will elect people that go to Washington not only to be an errand boy, but to fight for something different than just seeing how much benefits they can get back into the district. So I know what you're talking about. I'm a little bit cautious about it, but I'm still more positive about it, thinking things are changing. Not so much when I'm in Washington, but when I travel around the country, I think our numbers are growing. There are more people involved at the state party level. There's more people in the state, state representation, state senate. So, and I'm very optimistic about the young people accepting these ideas of liberty and civil liberties and foreign policy. That makes a lot of sense. I think they're sick and tired of this debt that they're facing. So I wouldn't be too discouraged.
Joshua, thanks.
Thank you.
I have to ask you, Congressman, about some remarks you made after the election. There have been some petitions sent about secession, and you said this was an American tradition. You talked about 1776, but of course there was 1862. A lot of people were taken aback by that.
Well, I don't know why they should. What if today Greece seceded from the European Union? The European Union got together, invaded Greece, and killed about 50,000 people. We would frown on that. No, I think the freedom to leave is the description of whether or not you're free. The Soviet system was so bad you could not leave. If you left, you got shot. So you have to have the right to leave. And secession, leaving, again, coming together is voluntary. So once you can't leave, you lose your right of independence and self-determination. I think it's a very bad situation. If you study history carefully, I think you'll recognize that it was well accepted and recognized. The New England states, were much more into secession than the South was, early on in the 19th century.
During the War of 1812, yes.
Yeah, they were sick and tired. They wanted to get away from the South. It was one of their problems.
Because the South was dominated by slavery and slave senators.
But they recognized it. It wasn't like it was an evil, that they were evil people because they wanted to separate themselves. So, yes.
Well, then the principle of nullification. If the federal government passes a law the states don't like, do they have the right to say no?
Oh, I think so, because that would... Just having the right to secede or nullify would restrain, the advancement of the central state. Now, if you lean towards saying, well, no, we need a stronger, more centralized control, then, of course, you don't want that. But those of us who are strict constitutionalists and libertarians and all, we want government local and at home and not at the central level because we don't believe in the central economic planning, whether it's social planning or economic planning. And
a lot of people would say, Congressman, without the role of the federal government, well, maybe not slavery, but we would still have Jim Crow on the books in many states.
why? I mean, why would that be the case?
Because it was on the books until the federal government said you couldn't do it.
The government, the government passed all the Jim Crow laws. What you do is, the federal government does have a role in that sense. You can repeal Jim Crow laws, but that doesn't mean you have to take over medical care and education and everything else in the world, to the point where nobody has any privacy. And the CIA and the FBI spies on us. The government gets so big and cumbersome. No, I think getting rid of bad laws is one thing, but after that you should leave people alone. If you endorse this idea, what you do is you say, well, the government is important to make people better, and therefore we endorse Obama's policy of arresting people who use marijuana for medical reasons, even if the state allows them to. And that's strictly a straight, this is where liberals and conservatives should come together, that the states' rights, we want the states to be able to say that people can have their liberties back and take their own risk. And right now, this is a growing issue. I think the states are practicing nullification right now when they legalize the recreational use of marijuana. There's a revolution going on, and I think it's great. But we don't hear the progressives speaking out and condemning Obama, just like they should have condemned the Republicans for having this strong, monolithic state that doesn't allow some of these problems to be sorted out at the local level.
Ron Paul is our guest. You're listening to Talk of the Nation from NPR News. Monica's on the line calling from Woodland in Washington.
Hi there. It's such an honor to speak with such an American hero. And my husband and I got to represent Ron Paul, my hero, in the local level as we approach the coming up to the state convention. And I'm speaking as a 44-year-old mom who has never had an interest in politics in her life. But I had one short conversation with a Ron Paul supporter named Bryce, and it completely sparked a passion and an intentionality of me of looking at liberty as not just an idea anymore, but as a total and complete mindset that meant something to my life and to my children's life. And I am so impressed with the supporters that I got to know, people of high integrity. And everybody that I've ever spoken with, it just makes so much sense.
And I'm sure the congressman appreciates your kind words, but where do you go now, Monica?
Well, we go to Gary Johnson as a second choice. And really, in my heart, it's more supporting him as sort of a show to Ron Paul and to all of his supporters to say, let's not quit. Let's keep Ron Paul and his ideas out in the public conversation.
All right. Monica, thanks very much for the call.
Thank you. Bless you.
Ken?
Congressman, regarding that last call, earlier in the show you said this is not about people, it's more about ideas. When you ran for president last time, when you ran in the primaries, you more than likely finished in last place in the primaries. But in the state conventions, in the caucuses, you guys did very well. When does it become a point when you go
well
from...
in some primaries.
Well, some primaries. But when do you go from the point of trying to make a statement to actually having an idea of we could actually win this thing?
Well, first off, we didn't come in last.
Well, in many of the primaries, yes, in a lot of the primaries, you finished fourth place in many of the primaries. But
yeah, and in some places the votes weren't counted quite accurately. So I don't want to.
No, but anyway, the point is when
does the thing of it is, we did very, very well. Our numbers keep growing. We were able to organize. We were able to use the democratic process where you have representation and send them, to the convention, and then they weren't even allowed to attend. So there was a lot of shortcomings there. But you say, when do you quit being overly principled and get more practical and think only about winning?
Well, you could do both, couldn't you?
Absolutely, because people, even my friends and some of our supporters are sort of split. They say, "Well, Ron Paul, I love him, and he has a good philosophy and all this, and we want him to do well, but he doesn't even really want to be president. He wants to spread ideas." Well, why can't you do both? I mean, the whole thing is my measurement of my success and support for these views is to get as many votes as possible. So it's not like I was overly principled and didn't care about the votes. a lot of people, my friends, or Republican conservatives, would come up and say, "Ron, we love what you're doing because you're a good fiscal conservative, and we could support you if you would just change your mind about this foreign policy." And I would bring this up in the college crowds, and I say, "This is what they tell me, that if I only change my foreign policy, then I would get a lot more support." But then I allude to the fact that how many of those individuals that come out to the thousands on the campuses, would they come if I had a different foreign policy? So they don't quite understand it. And in the midst of a revolution where you're trying to change a whole mental status about what the role of government ought to be, you don't look like, it doesn't happen overnight. But this lady that just called in, she's the reason why I'm optimistic. I mean, she's not alone. People are so disgusted, with the system we have, the spending of the money, Republicans and Democrats lying to us, starting these wars, violating civil liberties, using drones to kill people around the world, using the FBI to spy on all of us. They're so tired of it. And young people are spreading this message and understanding this like never before, because the revolution is very vibrant, mainly because of the Internet.
Ron Paul, thank you very much for your time. You've always been accessible to us, and we appreciate that.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you.
Congressman Ron Paul, who retires at the end of this term, and one of the people we're talking to in exit interviews, political junkie Ken Rudin. Well,